and welcome back to another episode of the Best Stand Pod in the Land. I am your sports director and host, Brian Nelson, and with me I have...
the one and only assistant sports editor, Andy Anders.
I actually had it there, bro.
Do you guys want to introduce yourselves, or are you just going to keep trying? Apologies to everyone watching, but we've been trying to get this going for quite some time, and these two have been reduced to just fits of laughter. But why don't you go ahead and introduce yourselves?
We're getting it together here at the Best Damn Pod in the Land.
Yes.
This is Griffin Strom, your sports editor.
And I'm the assistant sports director, Khalid Hashi.
And today we are going to attempt to talk about the Indiana game, what happened there, and also look forward to what's going to happen Saturday when Ohio State takes on Miami of Ohio. And also, there's other sports going on. Men's basketball has stuff happening. And then, stuff like women's soccer, men's soccer, and all that good stuff.
Brian Nelson weekly segment for men's soccer.
Find out.
It has returned.
Stay tuned to find out what his sport of the week is.
Yeah, I mean, men's soccer, we'll get there, okay? I'm going to leave the viewers in suspense for that. Okay, but Ohio State, Indiana, I think we all expected that to be a pretty dominant performance by Ohio State, but even then, I was still pretty shocked just by how well Ohio State has continued to play. That was a absolute rout. 50, yes?
Can we even say it's a shocker anymore? It's like week 3 now.
No.
And it's like we've seen the same dominance all 3 weeks.
Yeah. This is kind of segues into my point, and they've seen me rehearse this little bit here, and I think it's kind of why some of the laughters come up is that they're like they see the intro a couple times, and it's just like that expectation. But look, here's the thing: I was sitting in the press box during Saturday's game, and in the front row, and JK Dobbins, breaks 4 tackles, carries 2 guys with him into the end zone for a touchdown, those last 5 or 6 yards. And you look over, and it put the game at a point where you never thought, Indiana was going to beat Ohio State Saturday. You never thought they were going to give them a real scare. But just the pure domination. The pure domination. What's up, Khalid?
You're going to shut the fuck up.
We're breaking down. It's been a long day. I'm not going to lie.
I don't know.
This is the time when the edit would just zoom in on my face and just see how done I am with all of this laughter.
Oh my gosh. I could just
Andy, please continue.
So, yeah, you didn't expect Ohio State to have trouble beating Indiana on Saturday, but the pure domination of, on the road, Big Ten opponent, you expected it to be something. You expect Indiana to come out with something. They could only do anything when they threw out a double pass and scored that 1 touchdown toward the end of the first half. But JK Dobbins runs that ball in, and it kind of sealed the fact how much Ohio State was dominating the game. In fact, you use that as the start of a story because it's emblematic of just how dominant Ohio State was Saturday, a week after they completely dominated 42-0, a borderline-ranked Cincinnati team. Mm-hmm. And you look at this other reporter from the Ozone, and the thing both of us said is this team might actually be really something. I've been an Ohio State follower as a fan from age 4 to 19, and then as a reporter from age 19 to 21. So for 17 years now. And I can only remember one other time when I sat there and I said, this is one of the best teams in the country offensively, looks like one of the best teams in the country offensively, and looks like one of the best teams in the country, not just elite, one of the best teams in the country, both offensively and defensively, this early in the season, week 3. You had that expectation in 2015, but they didn't deliver on it, really. There were offensive issues all year. And in other years you had, but 2006 was the only other year I can remember, or this early in the season, you're thinking, wow, this looks like one of the best teams in the country, offense and defense. And you could even throw in special teams.
I was about to say, all 3 phases.
But, yeah, with the 2 block kicks they've had already and multiple punts down inside the 10-yard line. Mm-hmm. This team will be the better team on the field. I'm confident in that for every single game on their schedule until they get past the Big Ten championship into postseason play if they get that far.
You don't think anyone in the Big Ten can challenge?
They're the best team in the Big Ten. Does that mean they won't have any issues? No, but this team will be the better team on the field every single game this year, and I feel confident saying that until they were to get to a tougher opponent in the postseason.
And Andy, I think I agree with you here. And earlier when I was saying that I was shocked by how like dominant Ohio State was. I wasn't shocked that Ohio State was playing well, but it was just more like it was their first road game. It was another test, another litmus test that they had to pass necessarily. And I just, Ohio State kind of came out flat early on. Their first couple drives didn't go quite according to plan. Justin Fields, didn't have the best game necessarily, but the rest of the team just looked so good. And then Fields, even then, still had a really good game. And this team just looks complete already, which I have not seen for quite some time. I do agree that 2006 is definitely probably the closest thing I can even think of, because the 2014 team that won the national championship was more of a late bloomer of a team, especially with the loss to Virginia Tech early on. So, but let's actually talk about Justin Fields and the game he had. Griffin, what were your takeaways from his performance?
Yeah, I mean, I think people were a little alarmed at a couple early kind of wild passes that you saw. One of them even got close intercepted. As a matter of fact, I think it was on a target to Chris Olave. But he ended up, he didn't have his best game, but he keeps, not turning the ball over. I think that's a big thing. You could see how him coming in as his first start on the road and his first Big Ten game as well, you might come out with the yips a little bit, You might miss a throw here or there to start the game off, but, he had, 2 touchdowns on the ground as well?
He did start a little shaky, a couple overthrows early, but, I mean, the rest of the team was so just overpowering, and then he settled in, and it was everything clicked. It was
like at the end of the day, he still threw for almost 200 yards and had 3 touchdown throws. I mean, most days I'll take that for like a 51-10 to win if my quarterback maybe has a few errant throws and still gets the job done.
Right.
Like really at the end of the day, that's all that matters. And another promising thing was how quickly Fields seemed to, shrug those, overthrows off and just settled in and made the necessary adjustments.
Yeah, he does really seem. I know Ryan Day has said this a couple of times. That Fields doesn't get too high or too low, and just his general vibe on the field and in the press conferences and stuff. It really seems that way. It really seems like he kind of stays right in the middle there. He doesn't. You don't see him having any type of wild celebrations when things go his way, because I think he expects things to go well for him. And when they don't, he expects to correct that and come back without that in his mind.
Now, another player who is, everyone's talking about, should be no surprise to anyone, JK Dobbins. The man. That is definitely one way to refer him. We had Andy with his anecdotes and, kind of starting this off just like with how, like, I think he kind of symbolizes just how dominant this team has been so far. I mean, he had a hell of a game.
yes.
Yeah, and last week against Cincinnati in the first half, he had 141 yards on the ground, and it's like, how can you top that? That's a fantastic first half. 2 touchdowns as well in that first half. He comes back this week, 185 total yards, 175 of those on the ground, and a touchdown all in the first half. I mean, he's really on a tear, and he's 4th in the country right now in rushing yards as well.
And one kind of the most important thing about this is how Ryan Day has really tried to emphasize in press conferences how he wants to establish the run game. This is an Ohio State team that is really going to bring things back to running the ball and have that kind of be their primary source of attack, especially with Justin Fields as a mobile quarterback. We all know the receiving core can get the job done, but with how good the defensive line has looked so far and with how dominant the running game has been, that's going to wear defenses out. When you look at kind of the opponents that you have coming up, Penn State, Wisconsin, and Michigan, they're all known for having good defenses that, can definitely stop a passing attack, but I do not know if they'll be able to stop this Ohio State rushing attack. Maybe early on. Maybe they'll keep things close, but over time, that's going to wear defense out. It's going to cause second strings to be brought in, and that's when Ohio State will be able to strike. Or they'll just dominate them completely. That's also a possibility.
Yeah. What's really interesting to me, and Ryan Day pointed this out Saturday, is just how many things they've been able to throw at this inexperienced, honestly, offense. You have Fields as a first-year quarterback at Ohio State, right? Second year in a college program, first year at Ohio State, comes right in and starts. And you have 4 new starters on the offensive line. And they've installed more facets to this offense than they've run in the past with the under-center looks and the 12 looks, like Ryan Day was saying. And the execution for all of it has been tremendous, and it really has started up front. That offensive line right now is scary physically. The way they are blowing teams off the ball. Dobbins, Teague, whoever's carrying it, rarely gets hit by a front line defender. They're making it to the second level before they're contacted, and that's so important as a running back, as an offensive line. When you can get that much movement and you create a new line of scrimmage, the offensive line's goal is to create a new line of scrimmage 1 yard forward. A defensive line goal is to create a new line of scrimmage 1 yard back. And Ohio State's doing it on both sides. They're accomplishing both goals. And, it all starts up front. The offensive line is absolutely road grading, and you saw some of the pressure issues that plagued them in the first game dissipated quickly as they've gotten closer and closer. The chemistry's developed, the communication's developed. Blown away by the play of this offensive line, and that's what's allowed Dobbins, who is running very well and running hard in his own right, to have these big games and to have these big games. It's something to watch for throughout the season, and if this team stays healthy, and I think the impetus is if Fields doesn't get hurt. If Fields doesn't get hurt, this team is destined for greatness because they're deep everywhere else.
And let me just hop in with a point here that I found interesting when I was reading a little write-up about Dobbins yesterday. He talked all offseason about getting back to his freshman form. That year he had 1,400 yards. And he actually has exactly as many rushing yards through 3 games this year as he did through his freshman year. So if he was trying to get back to that freshman form, that's literally exactly where he's at right now.
And that's with having a very down game against Florida Atlantic. So if he's on point for the rest of the season, even like going up against teams like Michigan and Wisconsin, we might see him beat that.
Mm-hmm. And that's with him doing most of his work in the first half of these first 3 games.
Exactly, and we will most likely expect him to play through, more of the bigger games.
Right.
Instead of just being taken out at halftime in lieu of Master Teague. But, if he was taken out, I do think we feel confident that Master Teague can, more than handle the workload. He had a very good game against Indiana as well. Khalid, what did you think of his performance?
Master Teague was very impressive. We were talking to Ryan Day earlier today at the press conference, and he was asked about how earlier in training camp there was a lot of question about who that second running back was going to be heading into the season. Was it going to be Demario McCall or Master Teague or one of the young guys? And he just kept telling us he wasn't really sure. There's a lot of uncertainty at that position, but it seems that once they were able to get Master Teague at practice, full strength practicing, and getting some game reps, he's kind of separating himself from the bunch, and he's become that go-to guy behind JK, and it seems like these past 2 games in the second half, he's been the one carrying the load. And in this game, he seemed to almost not skip a beat from what JK has been able to produce on the field. He was the second over 100-yard rusher for Ohio State in this game, which is pretty impressive because I can't really remember the last time Ohio State has had 2 100-yard rushers. It would have to be somewhere probably where Braxton Miller and one of the running backs were playing together. So it's been a while, but my biggest takeaway, I would say, from the entire game is just the fact that this team, we went into the season and there were just so many questions that not a lot of people could really answer. There's a lot of uncertainty at a lot of positions, the defense, the quarterback, the receivers, who's going to step up. There was just a lot of questions. It seems like through 3 games, this team has answered a lot of those questions, and they're seeming very consistent, and they all are playing at a very high level right now. Justin Fields is in the Heisman conversation right now across the nation. And then at receiver, you have a group who lost 3 great receivers to the NFL draft, and you have guys like Chris Olave, Benjamin Victor, Austin Mack, KJ Hill, and Garrett Wilson who are picking up the load, and they aren't really skipping a beat at all. And then at the running back position, you have the dual threat with JK and Master. It's kind of safe to say it's a dual threat because literally as soon as they take JK off the field, Master Teague is just able to get right into with the ones, and the offense doesn't skip a beat. So it's great. And then also on that defensive side of the ball, it's been very impressive. we saw last week with Cincinnati with Michael Warren, who was over a 1,000-yard rusher, and they held him to just 15 yards. And then you come to Indiana, you have another 1,000-yard rusher in Steve Scott, and they hold him to just 9 yards. Indiana's leading rusher was their quarterback, Payne Ramsey, who is not known for his scrambling ability. So that was really impressive to see. And then also just the fact that they're clicking on all cylinders on all three phases with offense putting up 50, and then you have defense holding teams to one-score games. The only way Indiana even scored in this game was by a trick play. Like, that's how desperate they got. And then you see on special teams, Chris Olave coming through with the blocked punt that turned into a safety. So I've been really impressed by how they've been playing, and I'm really excited to see how they perform against bigger teams with Big Ten play coming up soon after Miami.
I do want to talk about Olave a little bit. I think that block punt is also another, symbolic way of looking at this Ohio State team where they just seem to be going above and beyond, what people would normally expect. Because, Olave is a starting receiver, and then here he is, on special teams, making those impact plays and, block punt, doing that's a momentum changer. And that just breaks the other team's spirit completely.
Absolutely. And it's funny you say that because we had Drew Chrisman at the press conference last week, and he was asked about how does it feel when you have guys who are starting players play on special teams with you, and he was like, it's huge. It makes us feel good, to know that you have your best athletes out there on special teams performing at a high rate. And it's just something that Ohio State has always done. I remember back when Ezekiel Elliott was here and he was a star running back across the nation. He was getting in there on punt and making tackles down the field. So it's a true testament of what this program preaches. And Chris Olave being such a great player on special teams is nothing short of what I expected, honestly.
Yeah, so a quick note about what Khalid said earlier. Last time, 2 Ohio State running backs went for 100 yards in the same game, 2017, November 11th against Michigan State. Mike Weber and JK Dobbins.
I was going to say, I would have been surprised if them two both didn't have a 100-yarder.
Ironically, not last year when they were splitting reps like they were.
Mm-hmm.
Just that Mike Weber had that huge game against Michigan State, and I think he got. What was it? He got there pretty quick. He had 162 yards on 9 carries in that game, Weber did. And then Dobbins had 18 for 124. But talking about Olave, what's really interesting with him is just how versatile he is as an athlete to do all those different things. And you talk about someone who might develop now into this first or second best receiving threat on this team with KJ Hill. I really think that he's shown the ability, both with his ability to high point a ball that he showed last year, his route running. He can run a lot of different, both deep and underneath routes. Fields and him seem to have a good connection. Fields has found him a couple times. He could get a little better with his hands, I think. Not like he hasn't had really any drops that were that bad. Did it come to mind? Maybe the one deep ball earlier in the season. Was that Florida Atlantic or Cincinnati?
I believe it was Florida Atlantic.
Florida Atlantic, yeah, where it's kind of a secondary route and Fields threw it over the top. But other than that, Olave is a really, really well-rounded receiver right now and a key player on special teams when you talk about someone who can block a punt like that. That block punts can change games, the entire momentum and outlook of a game.
Especially in a close game. You never know.
Yep. But it wasn't surprising that he did block it, considering if people remember what he did in the Michigan game last year with not only 2 touchdowns, but also that a huge punt block, which actually led to a 17-0 Ohio State run that really changed the game against Michigan.
Yeah. And one thing I'm kind of impressed with is Justin Fields' ability to really not have a go-to receiver. He's seemed to really spread the ball evenly throughout. And Chris Olave, Benjamin Victor, KJ Hill, they've all been getting the ball. And even in week 1, we saw the tight ends getting some love. And it's still I'm waiting to see if there's a point in the season where Justin Fields becomes predictable and finds his receiver that he's constantly trying to find. But as of yet, I haven't really seen it. It's kind of been up in the air every week. You never know which receiver is going to have the big game.
Well, I think that's a credit to Ryan Day as an offensive mind. You saw it last year with Haskins. It was the same thing. Haskins didn't really have – Paris Campbell had over 1,000 yards receiving, but you never thought like Paris Campbell was Haskins' go-to. He could throw it to any of the 6 guys in that rotation, and you honestly didn't know who was getting the ball. And it's the same thing this year. Ryan Day and Mike Yurcich and Kevin Wilson have designed this offense to where when it's that pro-style kind of attack where you can spread it out to as many different receivers as possible. And the fact that the run now is complementing it so well opens that up even further because now teams, you have to crowd the box against the run. You open it back up with the pass with this ability to spread the ball. And Fields has great arm talent too. I mean, that's not even something we've talked about, the ability to really, he's got great strength and accuracy on most of his throws. A few issues with that last week in the early stages against Indiana, corrected it quickly. So, yeah, really impressed with the way this passing game is just coordinated, and then Fields' ability to execute in that game.
And also, something that I'm really, really impressed with is I know the offense gets all the love throughout the media and throughout the week, and it's like that's all we can't stop talking about is Justin Fields. He's in almost everyone's Heisman race nationally. But this defense, man, we got to talk about this defense. Last year, they were like the weakest link on this team, and it's honestly a lot of returning players from that same team. But with the addition of Greg Madison, Jeff Hafley, and Al Washington, it seems like they've done an entire 360. Like, this defense is lights out. And we spoke with Robert Landers earlier today, and there's a stat that was brought up to him where they're holding running backs to about 1.5 yards per carry. And he was stunned by it, but he was more taken away. The thing he was taken away with both is the fact that this team can be so much better. And he believes that they really haven't hit their stride just yet. And the fact that they're this dominant this early is a testament to how great this defense is.
I definitely think that is true because one of the more interesting stats to take away from Saturday's game was the defensive line performance. And obviously Chase Young had a great game with 2 sacks again. He's just having a monster season so far. But you had 3 other people get sacks in Javonte Jean-Baptiste, Tyler Friday, and Zach Harrison. And Andy, correct me if I'm wrong, but those were all their first career sacks at Ohio State, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
A lot of young guys.
A lot of young guys already getting their first sack already. If you're talking about how this team can be better, I mean, like Zach Harrison was the sack that caught to my mind because there's definitely kind of like terms of like skill and technique he could work on, but the raw power and his athletic ability just shone through on that play. Through the season, I feel like Baptiste, Friday, and other people will just continue to learn and to grow. And that just adds that just adds more weapons for this already potent defensive line.
They really don't rebuild. They just reload every year. They just kind of get better, and it's like, all right, at first it was like Joey Bosa, and then you had his brother coming in, and then you have Chase Young, and it's kind of like starting this trend where it's like, all right, who's going to be the next top defensive lineman in the country, And right now we really don't know exactly who that person is going to be, but we kind of have an idea with Tyreek Smith and Zach Harrison being such a highly recruited player coming out of high school. But it's awesome to see how this defense is really showing that the silver bullets are back.
Right. I think Chase Young might be one of the best defenders in America. What were you saying, Griffin, though?
I'm curious to see if Jonathan Cooper is going to come back anytime soon.
Yeah.
And what type of
he looked good in warm-ups.
He was good and active running.
He was running around helping him run the drills, and the indication seemed to be that it wasn't going to be something that held him out for a majority of the year or anything.
Mm-hmm.
I'd expect to see him back soon. Maybe not this week, but soon.
And I'm wondering if he does come back, how limited he'll be as well. But I think he was excited to come out his final year at Ohio State and really make some plays because he hasn't had all the stats. He hasn't had all the sacks. I think he might have had like 2.5 sacks last year. And I think this was going to be the year that he really, as a team captain, as a leader on that defense, he was primed to have, his best season. And so, I'm kind of curious to see what he'll be able to do when he does come back, if he does come back.
Once that D-line gets back to full health, it's going to be even more scary than they already are playing at. Can we talk about my hot take before the season started when I said Chase Young is better than Nick Bosa? And you guys were like, that's kind of a hot take. And honestly, I don't blame you. A lot of the country would probably say that's kind of hot because Nick Bosa went number 2 overall and arguably was one of the best defenders to ever come through Ohio State. And through 3 games, Chase Young has 5 sacks and has looked so disruptive. It's like unbelievable, and he's on pace to break the Ohio State record for sacks in the season. So I don't know if that hot take is so hot anymore.
Nick was at a similar rate last year, if I remember right, before the injury, and caused a couple big plays. Chase is an incredible pass rusher. Might be even better at pass rushing than Nick. It's hard. Nick, they're just so dominant. Both of them so dominant. Nick Bosa was really the best player in the country last year before he got hurt, and that's hard to be. So are you putting Chase at that level?
It's hard.
It's
really
getting
argue,
close.
Yeah. It's like, who else is really up there? It's like you have Tua.
I would
Jerry
say
Jeudy.
Yeah, I would say Nick Bosa's run defense impressed me a little more. I don't see as many big plays in the running game from Chase as I saw from Nick. Then again,
I mean, they are holding teams to 1.5 yards.
yeah,
per carry,
it's
so
such a
like,
team effort.
Yeah,
It's such a team effort with this,
yeah.
where Nick was having to do it all himself last year.
I feel like we're just splitting hairs at this point. They're both such incredible athletes, and we
Exactly,
haven't even brought up Joey Bosa, who again was incredible.
What is the sacks record, by the way?
Vrabel has it. I forget what
it was
it
like
is.
14.
I will look it up right now.
It was like 12 or 14 in a season, but yeah, through 3 games he already has 5, which is like a ridiculous rate that he's at right now. And he's looked so disruptive outside of just getting sacks. Like he's forcing teams to go the opposite way of where he's headed, and that's how these other defensive linemen, these young guys, are getting such great production out of them so early, is because just having Chase on that field like shifts the whole focus of the offense and changes the plans and what they can do and what they can't do. And it's honestly nice to see.
Yeah, I looked it up. Vrabel has the career sack record, and then Vernon Golson has the single season sack record.
What is the season?
If single season sack record is 14 sacks in 2007 from Vernon Golson. Vrabel has had 36 sacks over his entire career, though, which is quite a lot.
So so he's on pace to break that in just 9 games.
Yeah,
it's kind of incredible.
If he were to, he needs 17 more sacks this season to equal the career best that Vrabel set. But if
17 more.
17 more, yeah.
He currently has 19
That's a
career
lot,
sacks.
but it's still achievable.
I don't know if he's gonna.
I don't think that's
quite
a
get
bit much.
That counts bowl games?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who
It's
knows?
still a bit much.
Yeah, it is a bit much, but
That would here is 5 sacks. That would mean he would have a 24 sack season, which is, I think, wouldn't that be the NCAA record
I
by
don't know.
far?
We'd have to look it up.
He might have 5.
He
against
only needs
Miami
8
alone.
though. 9. He needs 9 to be second all time.
he's had a 1.5 in the first 2 games, and then he has 2 against.
Which I think 9 he'll
Indiana.
definitely get to. 9 more. He
definitely.
needs 9 more. But I think he'll get 9 more for sure.
Yeah, man.
That would be
I don't-
14 total.
To be honest, I don't see an offensive line in the Big Ten that can honestly like stop him unless
Wisconsin.
I don't know.
Wisconsin
I mean, it's
always
like,
has a great line.
Yeah, they always have a great line, but it's like Chase is that different of a player.
I agree.
So
I
it's-
agree. The thing is, do you start running away from him? Do you
Exactly,
start
and my thing is
double teaming, triple teaming, chipping? Those
and if you
kinds
do
of
that,
things.
it's like, yes, you're stopping him from making a play, but it's like, all right, Ohio State's loaded. They have other guys, so it's like you're really just taking away from your own game plan if you solely focus on running away from him.
not if guys keep getting hurt. That could be an issue.
That could be an issue, but I think Ohio State has enough depth at defensive line. The defensive line, like, is easily the position that Ohio State's the strongest at depth-wise and talent-wise.
This is true.
So, I mean, we were just talking about, like, Zach Harrison, Baptiste, and Tyler Friday. Those are just 3 names that I could throw out there that could step up to fill a void that, Chase Young, that if we theoretically lost Chase Young to an injury or he was just getting triple teamed. But Chase Young himself has said that he feels unblockable. Yeah. So I don't know if three people is going to be enough. Might have to throw the entire defensive line at him.
All right. So we've given a lot of love to this defensive line, but I think it's time to give credit to the secondary. This secondary was the most scrutinized unit on the team.
Linebackers. I would say
Actually, yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
You're
the
right.
linebackers.
The linebackers were the most criticized. But we can
But
definitely
it's honestly not by far. Like
No,
both,
the secondary got a lot of flack too.
yeah.
And specifically one guy in particular.
Yeah. Damon and Arnett.
Dude, plug that story, bro.
Right?
Plug that story.
It'll be out when?
Tomorrow morning.
Tonight. Or, yeah, I guess.
By the
tomorrow
time this podcast is up, it'll be online at thelantern.com. You can go read my piece on Damon Arnett.
Hot off the presses.
Yeah, it's fresh.
Hot, fresh, steamy content.
But I don't think there's any player on this Ohio State team who has gone through a lot of scrutiny or near as much scrutiny as this man, Damon Arnett. A lot of the fan base has even been calling for him to just be benched and put in one of the young guys at some points throughout the season last year. He had a lot of pass interferences last year, and it was just a lot of coverage. Like, he was the one who gave up a lot of big plays last year, and I think that's what made Ohio State fans really mad. But so far, he's been really impressive. This whole entire secondary has been pretty impressive. But, yeah, Damon Arnett, he had 3 pass breakups, 3 total tackles, and had a touchdown, an interception return for a touchdown that was 96 yards, which I'm not sure, but I'm assuming is the record at Ohio State. 96 yards is a bit, and he right now obviously leads the nation in interception and return yards. But yeah, he showed a big time. It was a misdirection play where the quarterback was rolling to the right and stopped, and they tried having the tight end leak out to the left side of the field, and Damon Arnett was right there, and the quarterback just lobbed it up. Damon Arnett he made a great break on the ball, caught the ball, and took it the distance. And another thing that was so great to see about that play is just it looked like the entire defense, all 10 other guys, were like right there celebrating in the end zone with him and were escorting him at like the 30-yard line, which is just unbelievable. Like it was like so great to see, and it was a great moment for him. And today at the press conference, he was asked if that was the biggest play he's made in his Ohio State career, and he said it was the biggest play he's ever made in his life.
Wow.
Yeah, and I do remember like back like preseason or even like when we were about to film our first episode, which was like before the Florida Atlantic game, we were like, kind of doing like a season preview, like the team going position by position. I remember when we were like looking at cornerback and like the secondary, we were talking about people like Brendan White or Jeff Okudah, Sean Wade, and then it's like we saw Damon Arnett. It's like, well, we could talk about him, but do we really need to talk about Damon Arnett? Yeah. I think we kind of know what we're getting from him.
Exactly. You've seen him play for 3 seasons
already,
so it's like you know what you're gonna get. But his story and the way he ended up to where he's at now, it's kind of pretty nice to see. He did contemplate leaving for the NFL draft after the Rose Bowl win against Washington last year. He didn't join the team playing back to Columbus. He stayed in a hotel in Los Angeles and decided to book a flight to Dallas, where he's from. And it was even getting an apartment ready to start training for the NFL. So he was mentally checked out and was done. It wasn't planning on coming back to Ohio State and all of his teammates thought the same thing. They thought he was gone, but a phone call from Jeff Hafley saying, hey, I would like to meet with you, as he was just newly hired. He took that meeting, and after talking with Chris Carter and all this feedback about, hey, you're not really – a lot of people were saying you're not ready for the NFL. You could use another year of eligibility to put more film out there for the scouts to see. And through 3 games, it's looking like so far it's paying off. He's looking pretty good. Looks like the whole secondary has improved, and they've been benefiting from this simplified defense.
Yeah, I think the main thing to take away, I mean, obviously the pick six is what everyone's talking about, but just the secondary in general and also the linebackers, they've been really disciplined with their pass defense in terms of cutting down on penalties, especially like defensive holding and pass interference. We've essentially not seen that so far, which is rare. That's like more like a norm. Look at the Michigan game last year. Even though they won 62-39, just think of like how much points Michigan got could have been taken away if you take away all the pass interference penalties they had. Because there were quite a few of them in that game that just really propelled a Michigan drive that was stalling.
Absolutely. And Urban Meyer was on Fox Sports saying that this entire secondary is full of NFL guys. And honestly, he's looking pretty right now. You have Jeffrey Okudah and Damon Arnett at the corners. You have Sean Wade at the slot. And then you have Jordan Fuller at safety. And even Brendan White. And they all look like NFL talent. Sean Wade is a guy who kind of goes under the radar a little bit. I feel like he's a huge X factor for this defense. He can play so many different positions and lock up so many different multi-talented players. And he's been making plays all over the field. And this defense, it seems like they're always around the ball, no matter where it is. If it's a pass, if it's a sweep, if it's a run, you just see multiple hats at the ball, and the pursuit angles they're taking have been all great. So it's kind of refreshing to see that this Ohio State defense has been playing with a sense of urgency.
Mm-hmm. And I think, the same thing could be said for like the linebackers with how well they've been played. They they were probably, like as Andy said, they were the most criticized group, and they just seem way more disciplined.
Yeah.
Like it's not even necessarily like their athleticism that's showing them; it's just their discipline of staying in their lanes, attacking the gaps when they're rushing, when just like having really good coverage and just making it so that both run and pass defenses are
let's give them
very
their
strong.
credit,
Well, I think more than anything, it's what's impressed me is just been their mentality. In previous years, it almost seemed like they were thinking too much and that they weren't confident almost in their technique in some ways. Where you had, a coach once told me a great linebacker refuses to be blocked.
Right.
He gets to the ball no matter what it takes. And Chris Spielman was once quoted as saying, Chris Spielman at a place that might be linebacker university, is considered probably the best linebacker at Ohio ever to play for Ohio State. Chris Spielman once said he used to pretend like the opposing backfield had kidnapped his family and that he had to get back there to rescue him. I always thought that was that's a pretty great quote. Last year it seemed like they went out of their way to be blocked. No offense to them, I guess, but it was odd to see just how much they were lacking in terms of pursuit and in terms of their ability to just fly to the football, man, and play, that kind of aggressive defense where you don't have to think, you just play. Obviously you have a technique as a linebacker, but you have to be able to just play and play aggressive, and they're doing that. Every single time someone tries to run the ball against this defense, 4 to 5 guys are right there.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Yeah.
They've held back, like you said, back-to-back 1,000-yard backs below 15 yards. Below 15 yards. Like, what the heck?
And it's not like they're not getting the carries. They're getting their regular, 15 to 20 carries, and
they're averaging less than a yard and a half in both cases.
It's crazy.
Yeah, it is crazy what this defense is doing against the run right now, and it's because the linebackers have gone from this, I don't know, this insecure, we're not sure what to do, we're going to, run into linemen, we're not shedding blocks well, to this, just flying.
Free.
They're playing free, flying all over the place with aggression, but at the same time, maintaining the gap, filling the windows that they need to fill. And there's just nowhere for opposing ball carriers to go anymore, and then you have to resort to a double pass to get any points on the board.
Yeah. And you look at last year, we talked about how Chase Young was putting the entire defense on his back. Defensive line still did a very good job, but it's the linebackers were the reason why Chase Young was stepping up so much and was just making such a big name for himself, because they weren't getting their job done and were just making it so he had to be the entire pass rusher, run defense.
Right. Malik Harrison has been an absolute monster this year too. I'd like to just to point to one guy. I think every game there's at least been one hit where you go, wow.
Yeah.
Is that guy alive?
Same could be said for a lot of guys, but definitely Malik Harrison has had a great season so
Pete
far.
Werner, man, I'll
give him credit. Yeah,
I'll admit I was a critic and I was skeptical, but that dude has proven that he can play. He can play.
He's been flying around. He's been hyped out there on the field too, making big plays and screaming in people's faces.
Yeah. This defense, I feel like last year the coaches didn't put these defensive players in the best position to succeed, and this year this whole simplified defense, this new scheme that Greg Madison and Jeff Hafley have put in place for these guys, is really allowing everyone to just really see the talent that they really have and put on the field, and the production they've been putting on the field has been awesome. These young guys, so even Taraji Mitchell and Baron Browning are two guys where all Ohio State fans were waiting to see if they could live up to the hype, because coming out of high school, those were really highly recruited players, and all of Ohio State people were wondering why aren't they getting on the field, why aren't they getting a chance, and a lot of people were calling for Baron Browning to start over a guy like Tuff Borland, who was the team captain last year, and it seems like Al Washington has put in a nice rotation to where all of these guys are getting on the field. So it's every down you have a fresh set of legs out there at linebacker, and I think that's one of the reasons why they're able to just make so many plays on the field.
Now let's kind of shift focus. We should probably get into actually previewing the game that's happening this Saturday. Ohio State's going to be taking on Miami, Ohio. And I think the reason why we were focusing on Indiana so much and just like how well the Ohio State played is because, well, no offense to Miami, but I do not think that they are as good a team as Indiana by a considerable margin, and I even think their coach doesn't think that.
What did he say? What was
the quote? The quote that's been making rounds around there is what he said. Ohio State, Miami, Ohio coach. Chuck Martin said on Facing Ohio State, it's kind of like going to recess and they have the first 85 picks.
Do you guys remember
and he's
recess?
not wrong.
He's not wrong, but that he's essentially saying that like Ohio State's worst player on the team is better than Miami, Ohio's best player.
And that's a fact. When we look at Miami's schedule, they've played 3 games and they just recently lost to Cincinnati 35-13. This is a Cincinnati team Ohio State has shut out last week.
42-0.
In a demolition.
Miami of Ohio is the worst team Ohio State will play this year, and I don't think I'm rewriting any books when I say that.
I mean, Rutgers could theoretically be up there in contention for that, but even Rutgers has even Rutgers is still a Big Ten team that could at least win a couple games.
A lot of you viewers right now are probably wondering why we're even talking about Miami right now. Like, I think everybody in this world knows that Miami really honestly stands no chance against this Ohio State team. What was the spread that they have currently? I think it was like
62, right? No, I'm just.
No, I think it was like
that would never
I think it's
happen.
a 40-point spread. I think it's like 40 or 42-point spread right now. And I think that's kind of being generous, to be honest.
Brian's on that. Other 2 games for Cincinnati. Iowa beat them 38-14. Their only win is against Tennessee Tech.
Who?
They're FCS. They're not D1.
Yeah.
The spread is 37 points, which is still huge.
No, that's an amazingly large spread.
Yeah.
Well, and the spread for Indiana was pretty low. I think it was like 14 points for Indiana, and
yeah, because Ohio State Indiana usually plays Ohio State pretty close. As we talked about last week.
So I don't know what you guys want to take about that, but
What's your score predictions?
hey, I'm 2 for 2 so far. So
As far as being closest,
yeah. And I was fairly close. I was 5 points off. I predicted, I think it was 52-14. Final score being 51-10.
I had 45-3.
It was 45-7.
I forget, but this time I'm going higher. I'm going higher than usual.
You were 42-10, just to clarify.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. I don't really,
score.
Yeah, I don't have a prediction for this week just yet, but I'm like really wanting to put up
Off the cuff.
I want to put 60 up there, but
60?
But something tells me that Ohio State is kind of
They'll
like
call off the dogs.
Yeah.
I want to say, hey, like we've proven enough.
Yeah.
Let's get our guys out of there early and just kind of not put up big numbers this week.
Call
so
off
I don't
the
know.
dogs.
Yeah, I almost feel like Ohio State might just like take this game as like a chance to experiment, kind of like with not necessarily a scrimmage, but like come second half when Ohio State has a considerable lead, say like if it's like 35-0, then we'll probably see Justin Fields not come back out, and it'll be
By the way, sorry if any of you guys are Miami of Ohio fans. We don't mean to offend you by the words we're saying, but we're just keeping it 100.
I mean, they know. Come on.
Their coach knows.
Their coach knows.
Yeah.
They're getting paid $1.4 million to be at this game.
Right.
So.
Can we talk about like if you're a coach in that situation, or no, let's say you're a player in that situation and your coach puts out a quote like that, what does that do to the team? Like,
I played 40 games as a high school player. My coach never put out a quote like that, even in a couple of situations where we were definitely overmatched.
Well, Khalid, I was always the first pick at recess, so I can't relate.
So you're the guy that this coach is talking about.
Yeah,
Bet.
Precisely.
You're one of the 85 that he's talking about.
I guess as a player,
I'm like the 84th.
The context of the quote was essentially him saying that, yeah, we feel overmatched, but we've got some Ohio guys, and we want to go out and have fun. And essentially, like, we're going to try and go out. And it's like, what do you say to your team? I guess, let's go.
Get them pumped.
Let's have fun. We have nothing to lose. Let's try everything.
We're putting $1.4 million in the bank. That's what we're doing. Right?
Give me my money.
Everyone does love an underdog story, and I don't think Ohio State's going to lose this game, but we have seen Ohio State underestimate opponents in the past couple of years when you're looking at trap games like Purdue and Iowa.
Right.
Obviously, Purdue and Iowa are much higher caliber teams than Miami, Ohio, but maybe Miami, Ohio will come out and surprise us early on. I don't think they'll win, but maybe they get a couple touchdowns in.
Right. Hey, who knows?
Maybe they come out with some of those trick plays.
Maybe we should pump the brakes because we saw this happen to Tennessee in week 1 of this season when they had Georgia State come into their home and defeat them 38-30. So
Tennessee?
Yeah. So
Tennessee is ass, my dude.
I'm just saying.
Well, you know what, Andy? You're the only 10 I see.
Hi, thank you. I'm not sure that's true right now, especially because I'm snotting a little bit.
Oh, guys, we didn't give you a recap of how the road trip to Indiana went with this sick man.
Yeah, we're all dying right now.
I have infected them all. If you watched last week, you saw I'm still got a little sniffle. Still got a little sniffle going. But we're getting through it. We're pushing on. We're here for you viewers at home.
All right, enough of that, Andy. We do have a couple other things to talk about before we run out of time. I do want to talk about men's basketball a little bit. Ohio State got another recruit. If someone wants to pull
Eugene Brown.
Yeah, Eugene Brown.
6'6" shooting guard.
Top 120 in the nation, right?
I believe he's a 4-star recruit.
Yeah.
And
the first commit out of the 2020 class, by the way.
Right.
Exactly. I think they have 2 in 2021 already, but this is the first one for 2020 right now.
Chris Holtman has really turned this entire program around. Like, in last year's this year's recruiting class that they currently have on their squad is really impressive to me. They had 3 guys in the top 40 overall, which is really impressive. Like, when's the last time we really seen Ohio State recruit so well? They have guys like DJ Carton and EJ Little and who's the last guy?
They had Alonzo Gaffney.
Yeah. So
Ibrahima Diallo rounded out the class, but he was he's a little bit raw.
Yeah. Slim
very
guy,
tall, though.
but he's very
tall, 7 feet.
But yeah, so they have a very talented team, and they brought back a lot of guys. Caleb Wesson didn't decide to go into the NBA draft. I like that new rule that the NBA has put in place with the NCAA, where they're allowing guys to put their name out there into the NBA draft, and so that they can get raw and honest feedback from these scouts to let them know, hey, this is where you're projected to go. Hey, you can benefit from spending 1 more year in college. And I think Caleb put enough film on tape to actually put his name out there in the NBA draft to see feedback. But I think he's really going to benefit from this last year for him. And this team has a nice mixture of young guys and veteran leadership. They have the Wesson brothers, who are both back this year for some veteran leadership. And then you have the young guys in DJ, EJ, and Luther Muhammad and those guys. So I'm really excited to see what this team has, and I think they'll actually be really, really good this season.
Yeah, and we'll definitely be talking about the men's basketball team, as we get closer to their season starting, and once the season starts, we'll pretty much be all men's basketball once football season is done, and I definitely am looking forward to that season because I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
very interesting team the basketball team has this year with the mix of old and young, and I really think this program in a couple of years will be in a very, very good place
nice
once
place.
Holtman gets all of his guys in.
Yeah.
But for now, you're still dealing with some of the
He's done a great
remnants
job already,
of
but
that entire class that left. What was that? I think it was class of 2015 or
yes,
yeah, that had 5 recruits and they all left the program within 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah. And before we close things off, I do want to, highlight the men's soccer team. They had another win. They had another win
Brian.
this past week. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, another win. They are now 4-1.
Listen, they're not playing games this year. They heard all the chatter last year, and they're like, listen, we're here, and we ain't playing no games. They're taking dubs left and right, okay? I think,
that is definitely one way to put it.
So what are the teams they've been?
Let me pull up their schedule quickly. They've beaten...
Oh, Brian, you don't know that off the top of your head?
Come on, Brian. You're the soccer
I
guy.
am the soccer guy. They've beaten UIC, Dayton, EIU, and Bowling Green.
And they
Let me
have...
tell you, those are some impressive victories right
They
there.
have South Florida coming
What
up.
are the records of those teams?
You know what? I don't know.
It doesn't really matter
That's
because
I know
too
Dayton
much
was-
work at the moment.
Dayton was 0-3 when they beat them.
they've put multiple goals up in these last 2 games, which is impressive because how many goals did they have last year?
8.
8.
The entire season.
I think they're basically there right now.
No, they've already
Wow.
they've already passed that.
That's
They have
That's
10
great.
goals based off my math so far. No, wait. No, that one of them was an exhibition game. Either way, they're at 8 or past it.
yeah.
The
So,
numbers have been crunched.
Already. Wow.
so it looks like Looks like Ohio State's gonna have a competitive team in almost every sport, which is an exciting thing to see.
Yeah. Another sport that's actually been having a pretty good season so far, very quickly, women's field hockey is continuing to have a very good start to their season. They're now 4-2. They lost a game last week and won another, but for the most part, this team's looking pretty dang well so
I'm trying to know
far.
about field hockey.
That is crazy.
I do not know much about
Field
field hockey as I am
Aren't they pretty-
exclusively a soccer person.
It's a lot like
Are they really
hockey.
good at regular hockey too?
It's on a field.
You know what, Clid? You can be the field hockey person. I'll be the men's soccer guy. You know, we're all
It's a
just-
lot like It's a lot like regular hockey, but it's on a field.
Yeah, that's on.
No offense to any field
Deeper
hockey
level-
enthusiasts out
deeper
here.
Deeper
Field hockey's
level
actually a lot of
analysis you
fun.
can't get anywhere else.
I do have a friend who's pretty good at field hockey. She played in high school, but yeah, I
do a
don't know
deeper
much
dive
about the
on
sports myself. Let's do a deeper dive on my friend who played field
just
hockey.
to highlight why I wanted to bring up the field hockey team is because their win last week was against Central Michigan, and it was an absolute blowout. They won 11-0.
Wow.
And even still, they've lost 2 close games to Virginia and Louisville, but all of their wins have been very dominant, except for one against Boston University, which was a 3-2 win. The others have been all shutouts. So, I mean, this team is clearly on a roll so far, and Big Ten play is starting for them this week, actually, when they're going to be facing Northwestern, so I'm very eager to see how that turns out. I have no idea how good Northwestern is in field hockey, but I think that Ohio State has what it takes to get the job done. All right. And that is all we have time for today. Stay tuned next week when we will be back to discuss the results of the Miami-Ohio game and preview the upcoming Nebraska game, and also talk about any other sports going on for Ohio State. For Andy Anders, Griffin Strom, and Khalid Hashi, I'm Brian Nelson, and this has been the best damn pod in the land.
See you guys.
And
See
you
ya.
stay classy, Columbus.